Hundreds filled Newcastle's Christchurch Cathedral today for the official launch of Education Week in the Hunter region. Guest speaker was New South Wales Director-General of School Education, Dr Fenton Sharp, who was quick to introduce this year's theme of literacy. When it comes to reading and writing, the children of today are apparently the best ever, with the incidence of illiteracy dramatically increasing with age.
And it's greater in the age 40s than the age 30s. And it's greater in the age 20s than it is in the teenagers of Australia. We shouldn't be looking backwards at the golden age of literacy. The golden age of literacy is with us today.
And on that particularly positive note, Education Week was underway.
It gives me great pleasure to be with you here today to declare Education Week 1990 open in the Hunter region.
In keeping with the location of the launch, those gathered were then entertained by the area's school children, singing hymns and reciting prayers. Those from the Waratah Orthopaedic School won many a heart as they signed their way through a traditional favourite. Officials were then presented with symbols of literacy from the children of Cardiff North Infants, Blackall's Primary School and Warners Bay High School, before the final presentation of the Holy Bible. According to the Director-General, it was a fitting gesture.
A literacy expert in America talked to a number of people, both black and white, who were illiterate in America, and asked them why it was they wanted to read. The majority of them said, "I want to read the Bible."
The management plans are now on display, though the aim of making greater use of local sports grounds has been considered by Newcastle City Council since 1987. The main changes planned are to the 20-hectare National Park. The preferred option aims to create parkland between National Park Street and Union Street by removing 4 netball courts and 1 cricket pitch. It also suggests moving the athletics field possibly to land next to Newcastle University, moving women's hockey to District Park and removing Newcastle Women's Bowling Club and a croquet court, possibly replacing them with more tennis courts.
We're the most rapidly growing croquet club in New South Wales, and we will be limited, there's no doubt about that, if we cannot expand. We have only 2 courts assigned to us, and by rights we should have 4 or 5 courts.
Also unhappy are the Lady Bowlers, who have played here for 57 years. Contrary to the report, they say their club is not having financial difficulties, and they do not want to amalgamate with the National Park Bowling Club, as is being suggested. District Park, on the other hand, has suffered from a confusing public image, incorporating the International Sports Centre and the Newcastle Tennis headquarters. The preferred option here suggests a new name for the 50-hectare site, Newcastle Sporting Complex, and extending control of the ISC Trust to cover the whole park. 4 more tennis courts are suggested, as is a new jogging and walking track. Rebecca Skinner, NBN News.
The roar of collapsing brick and scaffold filled Hunter Street as the lunchtime rush reached its peak. Pedestrians ran for their lives as the facade of the old Herald building toppled across the street.
I was walking up the footpath and I heard a rumble, and just as I heard that I saw the wooden cover begin to distort, so I just ran out. I got hit by the press, and there's someone under there now.
How many people do you know behind
I think there's probably about 4 or 5 under there, maybe. I don't know. I could be wrong.
No one knew how many were trapped under the rubble. All rescuers could see was several crushed cars and rely on accounts from drivers who'd escaped.
I looked up and it was this building. It just came down within 2-3 seconds. I just crouched down in the passenger seat. The car stalled and I thought this is the end of it.
But it wasn't.
Thank God for that.
The human chain worked frantically as witnesses told police they believed several pedestrians had been engulfed. An hour after the collapse, the rescue effort was stopped. Police went in with listening devices to see if they could hear any sign of life. Hunter Street was almost silent as a sound sensor was switched on, but there was nothing from underneath. The order was given to bring in a crane. Guided by building workers, the tangle of steel was hooked and shifted clear. The first car was brought out. It had been parked in front of the building and fortunately was empty. Their biggest fear now is that the rest of the facade will give way. Facade will give way.
Since the quake rumbled through Newcastle last December, builders and property owners have been caught up in a rush to tackle repairs. But with costs and waiting periods both extensive, many are opting for shortcuts by skipping building permits.
We believe there are hundreds of cases out there.
What are the dangers of those sort of cases, John?
Well, if the building laws are not complied with, we can't guarantee protection of life, property or welfare of the people, and that's what we want to do. And if there's no building permit comes in, there's no insurance scheme operating under the Building Services Corporation.
This concern has launched the first of a series of blitzes, one starting today. In a region bounded by Mayfield, Katara South and the coast, 10 health and building surveyors have each been allocated a zone to patrol. They will inspect all building sites and request permits. If they can't be produced, a quick call to council headquarters will determine if the work is legal. For those found to be doing the wrong thing, the consequences could be grim. Already the Blitz has taken its toll on one builder. He's about to be summoned after being found operating without a permit on a Cooks Hill home. He's now facing fines of up to $2,000 and the loss of his building licence.
The store was robbed sometime between 2 and 4 a.m. when thieves threw a brick through a display window and grabbed 8 leather jackets valued at about $5,000. 2 other jackets were damaged during the robbery. Attempts to grab dozens more on racks inside the store were thwarted by security measures. It's the 4th smash and grab robbery this week. Store manager David McElwain said he almost expected his business to be next.
With all the hype that's, we hear about it and read about in the paper, we're a prime target, with the quality leather jackets that we have and the amount that we carry too. So I was waiting for it to happen, yes.
It was to be the whiz from Cessnock's 50th state title, and while he was winning the 500cc event, Chris wrapped up his 18th national championship. It was a big day for the locals, with Brendan Dipper winning the 250cc title. From the Raymond Terrace Club, it was Dipper's first title win. In the 1000cc sidecar event, Cessnock driver and rider Craig Bond and Warwick Penfold were victorious, and the 500cc sidecar title went to Raymond Terrace duo Jeff Lawrence and Darryl Hall. Former Winfield Cup player Neil Baker is now facing the Newcastle Rugby League Judiciary, answering 2 charges, one of attacking the head of an opponent and the second charge of offensive language towards referee Benson. In his comeback year in the Newcastle Premiership, Baker has had plenty of ups and downs, scoring more than 160 points, being sin-binned on 12 occasions and late in yesterday's match being sent from the field. Benson also dispatched Tony Price, Mal Graham and Lorne McDougall for stints on the sideline after indiscretions, and Waratah's Darryl Warden suffered a similar fate. The Western Suburbs Club have filed an official letter to the NRL Board of Directors concerned with the way the game was handled by Benson. Before a media ban was placed on the controversial referee, he did say he was super confident that he would be in charge of next Sunday's grand final between Lakes and Waratah. Furor aside, there's no doubt that the Cheetahs deserve to be in the Tooheys Cup grand final after a brilliant 16-8 win over the Rosellas. Set up by their captain-coach Craig Higgins, Waratah will now be out to win their first grand final since 1952. But Higgins was quick to play down his own role and praise his teammates.
I think our team, we hadn't had much luck with West. Maybe the luck went our way. They're a young side, they're improving every game, and I think that'll show, and well, see what happens next week.
The captain-coach can't do much more than score 2 first-half tries.
I could do a little more, but anyway, I did my job, and the rest of the blokes did too.
Obviously got to be confident now going in against Lakes United.
Confident, but not overconfident. They're a great side, it's one each. You know, during the year, we've beaten 24-12, they've beaten us 28-12, so it's anything to go.
When the Anzacs were storming the beaches of Gallipoli, business was booming for Newcastle's newly opened steelworks. The locals could set their watches by the whistle from the BHP plant. It was a productive but unsettled time that transformed Newcastle into Australia's first heavy industrial city.
The city was loyal to the Empire and ferociously behind the war. But by the same token, they were wary of the economic consequences of the war. They were worried.
Jo May's study reflects a personal interest in the topic. It won her an honours degree at the University of Newcastle, as well as the recognition of the City Council's Local History Award. The work spans an intense period between 1914 and 1918. Billy Hughes, the little digger, was Prime Minister, but the workers defied conscription. The Labor Party lost its grip on the blue ribbon seat of Newcastle, and the state's only independent won the seat. The Great Strike of 1917 over clock-on cards for industry brought the country to its knees, and with the deregulation of unions, spelled the death knell for what had been dubbed the working man's paradise.
There was a lot of mistrust. It was a them and us situation to a certain extent. Mind you, that didn't mean that the union heads didn't have good relationships with the employers. They did.
The printed history will remain in the City Library as an important reference to the past.
I learned that what happened yesterday happens again today. History is a wonderful thing for teaching you perspective.
Six weeks ago, Mark Sargent's 1990 football campaign was in tatters. Seriously strained ankle ligaments supposedly confining him to the sidelines for the rest of the season. Now he's just days away from rejoining the Knights' semi-final crusade and is certain to play some part in Friday night's crucial clash with the Broncos.
I guess I'll be playing a part at some stage, but it remains to be seen.
Could you last a full game?
Well, I'm not really sure. I think it'd be safe to say that it'd be pretty doubtful, having had 6 weeks out, and everyone else has been still running around in that.
Regardless of its duration, Sargent's return will be a welcome one. His strength up front could well help topple a Brisbane lineup that looks shakier than ever.
Well, it's a good opportunity for us. Their side's a little bit disrupted, and they've lost a couple in a row as well. So it is a good opportunity for us, and I'd be happy to play a part in the game, especially if we win.
Coach Alan McMahon has hedged his bets by naming a 15-man squad, including Sargent and former skipper Sam Stewart. Bruce McKenzie, NBN News.
The truck enforcement campaign changed locations several times during the day, concentrating on the major arterial routes through the Newcastle district. Late this afternoon, they'd set up a station on the F3 freeway south of Freeman's Waterholes. Using sophisticated equipment like the RTA's portable truckalizer, police hope to have tested more than 1,000 trucks by the end of the week. It's a routine operation, but this time, unlike the others, they'll be looking not only for defects, but also for drugs. A police dog has never been used on an operation like this before. Police say it will concentrate mainly on Pantech vans and smaller trucks. They say they're not sure if it will turn up any surprises, but they admit they had good reasons for calling in a dog trained to sniff out drugs.
Well, we have intelligence reports that drugs are coming out of the north coast or going into the north coast from the Sydney area, so we're just covering all bases.
The dog and handler will continue to work until late tonight, and police say they'll remain with the truck enforcement team until the operation ends on Friday.
In the early hours of the morning in Britain, the arrival of a Mercy flight from Saudi Arabia. On board, 140 Australian women and children. The families of telecom experts working under contract to the Saudis.
How are you feeling? Good to be out?
Great, thank you.
It's taken several days to organise the airlift. The families were all across the country, although most came from Riyadh and Jeddah.
Lots of people were leaving, lots of expats. But it's going to change forever. It doesn't matter whether we get peace now or not.
The 65 women and 75 children will soon be leaving on the final leg of their journey to Australia. For now, the telecom workers remain.
I left my daddy behind, my friends came too.
And the first provocative act today in the naval standoff in the Gulf. An Iraqi tanker was refused permission to load oil from a pipeline that carries Iraqi crude into Saudi Arabia. It brought threats of reprisal from Baghdad.
We will remember very well those who participated in the blockade.
But the real success of the trade blockade depends on the closure of the main route into Iraq through neighbouring Jordan, one of the countries still friendly to Saddam Hussein. Iraqi ships have anchored here at the port of Aqaba for years, unloading goods destined for the convoys to Iraq. Jordan's King Hussein has so far ruled out closing the border to these trucks carrying food, medicine, tractors and tyres. So day and night the trucks run the long route, up across the desert and on to Baghdad. It will eventually be up to King Hussein here in Jordan to take that toughest of decisions to close off this last lifeline to Iraq. If he does, the country could lose $4 billion in trade. The economy, already in trouble, could collapse.
In the news tonight, the United States says it will use force if necessary to institute trade sanctions against Iraq. A pilot charged over a fatal hot air balloon collision last year appears in court, and a Stockton woman gives birth following instructions over the phone. NBN News tonight at 6.
I didn't fully understand what the Academy was about, and tonight's been very enlightening.
Go back to those far distant days of Hunter Academy of Sport. I'd like to introduce Professor Saxon White.
It's 28 years since the Cheetahs have won a grand final, and as a twist of fate, it was against Lakes 5-4. On Sunday, they will go in as the underdogs, but with a growing groundswell of support. With shops sporting streamers and balloons, it was obvious in Station Street, Waratah, who was expected to grab the Tooheys Cup and be crowned premiers of Newcastle.
Waratah.
By how many?
20.
Do you think they can beat Lakes United on Sunday?
Oh, I think so.
By how many points?
1 point will do as long as they win.
Down south in Seagull territory, similar signs of devoted loyalty, with banks, building societies, sponsors, shop assistants and residents echoing their support. Who do you reckon's going to win on the weekend?
Lakes.
By how many?
10.
From the Medicare office to the Westpac Bank. Belmont was in fine voice for the Peter Walsh-led side. One unfortunate Cheetahs supporter was caught in Lakes territory, but not for long. You'd be pretty game, man, being in Lakes territory. You're barracking for the Cheetahs, wouldn't you?
Yeah, we're moving out right this very minute.
Good on you. Lakes hooker Steve Brown acknowledges the fact that his side should be superior in the forwards.
We've got a lot of guys that have been there before, and I'm looking forward to watching the young bloke, Kyle Emerton. I was the coach a couple of years ago, and now we're playing together. It's a bit of a kick for both of us, really.
One thing is for sure, it's going to be some game of footy.
Now compiling a report on the visit for government and the coal industry, Mr Keegan's role was to emphasise the improvements made in transportation and coal loading. Mr Keegan pointed out to top management of power companies and steelworks the major strides made in industrial relations since the mid-80s, and that the amalgamation of Kooragang and Port Waratah coal services means Newcastle now has the largest and most modern loading facility in the world.
We were talking to people who know our coal industry, but we're not up to date on what's happening here, and they were very interested to see that privatisation about the ports, Sydney, Wollongong, Newcastle, was well and truly advanced, and they applaud private enterprise.
The visit was timely in another sense. The Middle East trouble will accelerate the move away from oil-fired power generation to coal. And while Australia is the major exporter of this commodity, we have to be on our guard to remain so.
There are other markets in the world, such as South Africa and Canada and other places, Cambodia, who really want to take some of our coal market away. And it was quite significant and opportune that we were there at the time.
Follow-up delegations are planned to help keep up the momentum.